Bonjour, my name is David Devere. I'm a wine and spirits educator and world traveler. You're watching Savvy Nomad TV. This is the Eau de Vie edition. This is episode 7 of Tasting Tiny Little Whiskies from this world tour of Whiskey Box. Now, number 13 is Fielden. They're from the UK, and they make a point of saying their whiskeys are made with rye, wheats, and barleys that are completely natural. They are done, harvested out of fields that use neither herbicides, pesticides, nor fertilizers. In fact, they say their fertilizer is red clover. Now, why even mention this? I think it's interesting because when in the 20th century you had herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers being applied, increasing yields and feeding more people, lifting more and more people out of starvation, you also had a backlash to these things because the traditional characters of the grain are getting reduced or removed and changing. And then you had people making traditional grain, and then all of a sudden it became organic. So you got the label organic added. But I always thought, why is it? I mean, the traditional method is making organic food. So the new thing should be called the inorganic method or the new way of doing it, not labeling the old way as the new, better thing. It's just the old thing. Anyway, I digress. Just an interesting way we use our language. And I'm interested to taste this whiskey because I want to see if that grain characteristic comes through. I think there's a place in the world for both inorganic and organic things. And certainly, it's a hot button topic for some people, not necessarily for me. Now, the Abasolo is out of Mexico, and they do something very interesting, and I'm going to go to the book for it because this is a whiskey that is 100% corn. Now, if you just think for a second, if you just think for a minute about the foodstuffs that have changed the diets of people around the world and where that food comes from. North and South America added incredible amount of new things to the world. What kind of things you might add? Well, just very brief list. The potato. Yeah, think about that. The potato. Corn. How about the tomato? Can you imagine Italian cooking before the tomato? Well, there was no tomato in Italian recipes until around 1600 when it came back as the devil food from Central America. But of course, it's not the devil food. It did make some people go crazy, and I'm kind of digress on a little bit of a tomato rant here. When the tomato came into Europe and they were eating it in Northern Europe, they were eating on plates made out of pewter, and the acids in the tomato leached the leads out of the pewter, and it made people go crazy. But in Southern Europe, they didn't eat off of metal pewter plates. They ate off of crockery. They ate out of ceramics. And so the tomato came in, and they went, oh my gosh, this is a wonderful thing. And the Italians invented things like a bolognese sauce. And there you go. Now you've got tomato in Italian cooking, and you don't have it in Dutch cooking. Anyway, the tomato, what would we do without it? Now here, this is all about corn. And they talk about the corn they grow. It's grown at altitude in Mexico. Most of Mexico is very, very high. Mexico City sits at a mile high. Anyway, they are growing Mexican, I'm going to try and say it, cacahuazinto corn. I will put the word there for you to say. Cacahuazinto corn. Grown at 7,000 feet elevation and by small, rural, traditional farmers in Mexico that the distillery directly supports, buys without a middleman so that the farmers can get the benefit of the distillery using their corn. So this distillery also treats the corn in an interesting way, and they make a point of pointing that out. And it's called nixtamalization. Nixtamalization. So nixtamalization is taking the corn in from the field, putting it in a hot vat of water, adding alkaline to it, which is lime. You add lime to it, you soak it in there, you warm up the water, you pull off the water, you rinse the corn, and then you grind the corn and use it however you want to use it. Here they're using it to make a whiskey. They would take that ground corn flour at that point, and then they would add water to it, they would add yeast, they would add enzymes, and they would ferment off the carbohydrates. They would convert the carbohydrates to sugars, ferment off the sugars, and then they would distill. Nixtamalization is an old technique. They've been doing this in Central America for nobody remembers how long. And why go through the process? Well, it has a number of benefits. It softens the corn, it makes it more easily digestible. If the corn has a fungus growing on it, it completely removes the fungus, making it safe for consumption. And it does interesting things to the characteristics of the corn. That easy digestibility allows, when you eat that nixtamalized corn, it allows you to take up the tryptophan in the corn, and tryptophan is synthesized in human bodies as niacin, and niacin is vitamin B3. If you have a lack of that, you get various skin diseases, and nobody wants that. So they figured out by experimentation or just by trying it that if you use a nixtamalization for your corn, you get these new health benefits that nobody even thought about before. It also makes the corn easier to use as a flour. And so that flour is called masa in the store. If you go into the store and you buy a bag of corn flour, it's labeled as masa. It has lye in it. It's been nixtamalized, and it's good for making corn tortillas and tamales. Okay, enough of me babbling about odd things while we're talking about whiskey. Let's go outside and taste number 13 and number 14. I can't wait. The intro might have been slightly confusing. We had a great big stump here. That may make a little more sense. And it was so big, but it was hung up in the fence, and we ended up having to cut it apart. And Sara,
after the wind snapped it off.
Right, it blew down in the wind. And so Sara made a garden.
Stump garden.
It's just full of
wood chips
and stuff. But maybe we'll put some dirt in here and we'll grow some flowers.
Flowers or some baby pine trees, or we'll see.
It's been a windy fall, and we've been doing
a lot of yard
chores. So now we're in our backyard next to the old stump in memory of it to taste our whiskeys today. So our first one is Fielden or Fielden.
Fielden, England.
From England. This is the one made with all natural wild grains, English grain.
Rye whiskey. Well, I mean, the pretty is the picture. The picture is pretty.
The pretty is the picture. Okay, let's see what we smell.
Those fields, if you don't already have your own book. Dave's got his notes in here. I have to put that back on there.
It smells clean. It's not overly aromatic. It is cold today.
Right, so that's going to make it harder to sniff probably because...
I get a little bit of apple notes.
Oh, good call.
And maybe pear.
It says apples and wild berries with butter and caramel.
Oh my goodness.
It does smell kind of buttery.
Oh,
and appley.
I don't want to say anything until you taste it.
Okay. I just like sniffing it. Okay, I'll taste it. Big body.
It's huge. It's a big bodied, it's creamy, and it's sweet, and a little spicy.
This will be the first time ever, second sniff.
A little bit warm on the backside. That is, getting my microphone. That is really delicious.
That is warming. I mean, I might be enjoying it a little more than normal because it's so warming and it's so cold out here. Flaky pastry palate with hazelnuts and freshly baked bread.
Now I get a little bit of baked, like baked pie crust.
Well, it says flaky pastry.
Golly.
Finish of winter spices and herbs, savory chocolate, and toast.
It was excellent. Here,
was
hold
good.
that.
Aw. Yeah, right there on that slippery, snowy spot.
All right.
So you found a price for that one?
Yeah, $62. You can find it in and around the U.S.
That was,
It was very good.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that was lucky number 13.
Lucky number 13. Okay. So this one I'm very excited about. This is
Me
the
too.
nixtamalized 100% Mexican ancient grain corn.
Easy for you to say.
I've never, I mean, of course, Mexico's famous for tequila.
I know, I'm like, is this going to taste like tequila? It does say this is the first dedicated whiskey distillery in Mexico with a farm-to-bottle approach. So maybe it's the first farm-to-bottle approach distillery. This is going to be interesting. Do you want me to spoil it by reading the tasting notes? Uh-oh.
It smells like tequila.
Oh, no.
Oh, it has a very tequila aroma. My goodness.
Uh-oh. I'm nervous.
I'm nervous too because the last one was so good. Okay, let's try it.
Okay. It says a nose of corn, toffee, tart apple, and chamomile tea. It does smell like tequila, but like we had something before that had a slightly salty under aroma, which this reminds me of a little bit. I can't remember which one that was.
It does not taste like tequila. It's actually
No.
pretty good. It's smooth. It's a little bit sweet. It's nice on the palate.
It's simpler than the one we just tried,
It is simpler.
but there's nothing offensive about it.
Nope.
Palate, deep, nuanced notes of roasted corn, honey, and vanilla, complemented by black tea and leather notes,
Black tea. I get that.
with a finish of white pepper, dab of oak, corn, and light spices. And the price is really where it's at.
$35. That's a good deal.
That's like the good old days.
Like the good old days. Just like this old
Just like our
stump.
stump.
But all good things come to an end, and such ends this episode of tasting whiskey in our backyard. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. We'll see you in a couple more days. Until then, I say a tutelare and cheers.
Cheers. Okay, it's falling to the left.